Section 1C, we're going to talk about bias that can occur in sampling and surveys. So we define bias as a systematic error that leads to an inaccurate or skewed representation. Okay, and so it can come in one of two ways typically. We can have selection bias, where the sample that we choose is not representative of the population. So if something about the way we took our sample means that our sample is way different than the rest of our population, that's selection bias, and that's going to lead to some results that might not be fully accurate. And then we can have response bias. And this is when participants give answers that are different from their true thoughts or feelings because of the question. It could be the way that the question is asked. It could just be the nature of the topic. There's a couple different things that we will look at. Okay, now this is important for you guys to know. Statistical bias is not the same as general bias. So, when we think about the word bias, we think about, having feelings towards or against certain people. Like I might be biased towards my friend, thinking that they're the greatest person in the world because they're my friend. Okay, so when the people in our survey have certain biases, that's okay. So like if they say that they just don't like people that wear purple, that's not the bias that we're concerned about. People are allowed to have those feelings and we are just reporting them. The bias that we're concerned about is when our sample results don't really match the population results. Okay, so different types of selection bias, ways that we can mess up taking our sample. One is undercoverage, and this is when we leave certain groups out of the sample. So if we decided to use art class as a sample of Patriot, there are no freshmen or sophomores in statistics. So we would be leaving those entire groups out of our sample. So if we were to ask a question, let's say about whether or not Patriot should have activity buses, people in our class are juniors and seniors and way more of them drive. They might not really care about an activity bus, whereas the freshmen and sophomores might really want them. So our sample wouldn't be accurate of the school as a whole. Voluntary response bias, that's when we allow people to choose to include themselves. So instead of me going and saying my sample is going to be these people, I'm just going to allow people to choose to include themselves. Okay? And a lot of times what happens with that is only people with really strong feelings about the issue will respond. So if you put a poll on social media about ticket prices for football games, okay, only people that go to football games are probably going to respond. All right, so your sample, again, is not representative of the population as a whole. Then we can have what's called non-response bias, and that's when a large portion of your sample does not respond. So you send out, let's say, 100 surveys and you only get like 24 of them back. All right, more than 75% of the people didn't answer your survey. So there's probably some bias there in the people that did answer. So the example we have is like if you send out an employee satisfaction survey, the people that aren't very happy might not answer because they might fear that they'll get in trouble or get fired, which means your survey is going to look great. It's going to look like everybody loves working there, when the truth is the people that don't like it just didn't answer. Then we can have our response bias. And remember, this is when people answer differently than how they really feel. And that can happen for a lot of reasons. One of them is leading questions, okay? So if the question is worded to encourage a certain answer instead of remaining neutral, don't you agree that teachers should earn more than their current low salary? We're trying to influence people there to say yes. Like, don't you agree? People are very agreeable. They don't want to like argue a lot of times. So they'll just say, yes, of course. Okay. And so our sample is biased there because we didn't ask the question in a neutral way. Then we can have what's called double-barreled questions. And so that's where we kind of combine two questions into one, but we only let people give one answer. So do you agree the food was delicious and the service was great? And then the only options we give them are yes or no. Okay, what if they thought the food was really good, but the service wasn't? Or what if they thought the surface was great, but the food didn't taste very good? We're not giving them the option to actually separately answer both of those questions. Okay. And then the last kind of response bias that we're going to talk about, there's a lot. There's like 10, 15. The three that we're going to talk about is social desirability. And this is where people might not necessarily tell the truth because of social pressure. All right, because they want to be viewed favorably. So if you are interviewing people in person and you ask them how many times they've run a red light in the last 6 months, people might not be willing to admit to breaking the law in person. All right, if they're filling it out on paper and it was anonymous, they might be more truthful. But anytime that things are in person or they have their names attached to it, people might not tell the whole truth if it's going to make them look bad. Okay, and that's it for bias.